Good afternoon. I'm representing Surrounding Studios. We're a landscape architecture and planning group here in Santa Fe. We are Surroundings Studios. We're a landscape architecture and land planning firm here in Santa Fe. Our idea was to consider putting things that we often think about at the end, at the beginning, which is our infrastructure and how we build. And we're proposing this idea of using sustainable infrastructure to be a main designer. Let me try again. So what we're asking to do is to think about how infrastructure, the last thing we usually think about, but which is the first thing in development, as a driver for how this site might work. We are advancing the idea of what's called an eco-district. It's actually an international and national movement that's going, that's asking communities, would they like to plan for the future, about how we will live in the future, how we will be sustainable. And it asks to look at a lot of different modalities, but the main thing is to make sure that a development's profitable, because if it isn't, it's not going to work. And but that it prioritizes the people and planet first. So in the community visioning survey that was done earlier, 4 items came up that were discussed before about industries that we'd like to attract to this site. And so what can infrastructure do to attract those kind of firms? So think about Amazon. They just put out this huge effort that everybody in the world is jumping through hoops to get. And it is got a checklist of things that they want that are really about sustainable communities. And so what we said is, what if we try to apply that to this district? One of the wonderful things is in the Midtown link that was approved in 2016. The city has already set it up so that the bottom here, which is the existing circumstance, could eventually, over many years, go to a much denser, much more urban environment, which is really helpful. In that, as a team, said, what if we take 3 big ideas and see how they could be done as infrastructure? And the 3 things we looked at is connections, water, and energy. So what could that look like? We're not going to go through all the little details, but with a eco-district strategy, it is really a framework. It doesn't tell you what to do. It says have this conversation with your community. When we look at connections, what should it do for the planet? What should it do for people? What should it do for profit? So the first initiative we thought is try to use what's there. Anything we can use that's there already actually saves a lot of money. You don't have to rebuild it. And it's lots cheaper to rebuild it than doing it new. So in this connection, what we said is right now we have almost nobody really coming using transit or bike. Let's build toward a future that is much more diverse with transit, with people on bikes, walking, and maybe cars still. But moving towards shared car strategies, looking for places to put solar panels that you could put electric cars under, looking for connections to the community that would allow a bus to come through here, exit out here, come through here, exit back out, because there are 3 bus lines in this area, but they need better connection to the site, and actually create a bus terminal there on site. So transit became real. And the other connection, which is not physical in the way we think about it, but is making sure that if we want to make the screen industry work, that where we've got that, we need to bring in broadband, because that is our digital connection that leaves for 21st century future. For water, it might really be, right now, all the water for this site is potable. It comes from the tap water. And so the future is to think about, could we recycle water as a whole system, and about taking what falls on the ground, on the roads, and on the and moving them to water landscapes, which right now, on your own home in most places, and even in this city, 50% of your potable water goes to landscape. And the other component being to look at, could we actually take black water that we produce out of these and recycle it back into places that is appropriate to use them. So the target would be that, again, in the future, we may use that the target is we don't use any more water than this site uses right now, but we expand the capacity for more people to live there by being smarter about the way we treat our water. And the last one was what taking care of the most easy thing for us to do. We live in a place with 350 days of sun. So what if we actually created a utility district, and it's an evolving discussion, but actually created a district where we own the CP, as a city, the PV panels in the site. If you put them on every building up there, we had a solar company do a calculation. It could generate over 21 million kilowatt hours annually. That's over a $200,000 savings. The reason for that, the reason Facebook is doing that with their site, is because it gives them capacity to control their electricity, avoid disruptions. Like one of the few electrical systems that survived Irma in the Dominican Republic was actually the solar systems. Everything else went down, but the places that had solar systems actually continue to work. And so what's really interesting for us is we think what's most important is actually thinking through this infrastructure, the stuff that's hidden under the ground. But actually, if we own the ways that they cable up together, we can actually migrate so that in the future, when technology changes, when our uses changes, when the way we distribute things change, we have the easy conduits to make those changes as quickly as we can. And to survive the future, we think that's important. So we also came up with a plan, and in our more concrete suggestions, we can sit down and look at them in the 20 minutes more. But it is, again, you'll see the shapes of many things that you already know, and like the dorm buildings. The idea being, look first, can you reuse them? Again, just the embodied energy of what's in those buildings is huge. And by maintaining this oval that we have, the cross-section through there, we use and utilize the systems that are in there to build toward that future. And you know, whether it all stays to the things we dream about today, we think it's important that if the infrastructure's there, it can change for what our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and children's children, not to be so fixated on what we are today. So last, we often are scared. We have been leaders in Santa Fe of national thought about sustainability. This really is a movement to think about what is our future sustainability? Where do we model this? This is what place we think. These are some examples of places. There's a lot of them. Many of them are smaller than this site, and they're all different. They all responded to their communities, so those are examples we'll look for. But it is part of a process. It is actually to do some things about commitment. It is to have further conversations about what are those criteria that you care about people, places, and planet. And then one of the things that I'd love to just note is this is actually Sawmill District in Albuquerque. I don't know if any of you know that area. If you haven't been there, go. It is an evolving mixed-use district, and those of you who are scared about what does that mean, it's a wonderful place. It has people living on the top and working and operating businesses of all scales below. They have taverns in there, they have all kinds of things, but please consider that. And I think it's a wonderful future. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and we hope that you'll think of the underground as much as above ground.